You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 312th edition of Assembly Call Radio and our 969th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of October 12th, 2023. I am your host, Jared Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
All right, so I think we all know what we want next week's banner moment to be. A commitment from five-star wing Liam McNeely, and who knows, maybe even another one from five-star lead guard Boogie Fland. Each is well within reasonable possibility, and I know you, like me, are anticipating their impending decisions with great enthusiasm and curiosity. But neither decision has happened yet, so this week's banner moment is going to focus on a couple of players who are currently Hoosiers, and who, I think, understandably in many ways, enter this season flying under the radar of many national, regional, and even local college hoops analysts. I'm speaking, of course, about Indiana's two Big Ten Media Day representatives and captains, Xavier Johnson and Trey Galloway. Now look, we all know the shortcomings each player has displayed during his respective time at IU. X turns it over a little too much. He can be erratic in his decision-making on court and off, and his two-point field goal percentage, especially at the rim, is below average. Trey, too, has been erratic in his decision-making and production, and he only has one season out of three in which he's been a credible outside shooter. Both guys have also dealt with injuries, which may or may not end up being suggestive of issues to come this season. We get it. We know. All of that is true. But the reason for my off-season frustration about the conversations surrounding these two, especially X, is because I think it's been too heavily weighted toward the negatives. Each of these two guys also bring a lot of underappreciated tangible and intangible positives to the table. And I suppose it's our job to make sure folks who only look at box scores and KenPom pages understand this. They enter the season with a combined 8 years of college basketball experience. Together, they form one of the most dogged, determined, and capable perimeter defensive tandems in college basketball. And they're underrated outside shooters, combining to shoot 40.9% from three across 186 attempts when you include Trey's breakout junior season and X's 2 seasons at IU. And when you think back to Indiana's biggest wins over the last 2 years, their fingerprints are all over them, whether they were in starring roles or supporting roles. The Purdue wins, the win at Xavier, the win at Illinois, and many others. Not to mention, they provide the heartbeat for this program with their effort, competitiveness, toughness, and team-first attitudes. So look, are there other backcourts in the Big Ten that project to be better? Sure. Michigan State's, for example. And there are a handful of others around the country with better stats, more NBA potential, and that you'd probably be objectively safer placing your money on to lead their teams on deep NCAA tournament runs. But these are our guys. They're grizzled vets in a sport where that really matters. And they're more skilled and capable than many people want to give them credit for, especially if whispers of Trey's dominant play so far in practice are to be believed. So I'm excited to load up for the 2023-24 season with these two as our leaders. You may beat them, but you're never going to outwork or outwant them. And I'll build my backcourt around that kind of foundation any day of the week. All right, now let me introduce my co-host this week. Ryan is off, though he has promised to try to be available on Sunday should an emergency podcast be necessary. In the meantime, reports indicate that he has spent an inordinate amount of time admiring his own personal statue of David pose in the mirror in preparation for a visit to Florence. So apologies for that mental image. But here with me, he is the Steve Aird of Girls Youth Sports Coaching in Cincinnati, the president emeritus of the Robert Johnson Fan Club, and the world's most intimidating bracketologist. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Andy Bottoms.
The best of youth sports coaching, you know that we got 'em. When it comes to analytic trends, you know he can spot 'em. For first-class bracketology, if you want the top, you gotta go bottoms. If you want the top, you gotta go bottoms. If you want the top,
All right, Andy,
gotta go
what is your
bottom
bottoms line on the last week in Indiana basketball?
Just more build up as the season gets ready to start. You had media day. You've got a lot of different previews and rankings of all the teams coming out, all those different things. I know we'll talk about some of that, but I'll just get you excited for the season. I think listening in, particularly to some of the comments from Woodson and X and Trey on the Big Ten Network studio, not so much during the actual true media day portion of it, but when they were with Dave Repson, I think you listen to them and they're certainly saying the right things about teammates and who's had breakouts in the offseason. And I think even some of Woodson's comments pretty candid, as we've come to expect with him, that they got a long way to go. They're trying to figure out new pieces and how they want to play, but I think certainly if you want to, you can look through that and find some inspiring or optimistic things that come out of those comments. So, we're just a little bit closer to being able to actually see it on the court. But, for somebody like Woodson, who's not really going to pull any punches, going to kind of tell you like it is, think there's reason for optimism, reason for some of the bumps in the road that we've talked about in the offseason. And I think, his read for now on the team feels about right, given all the turnover and everything that's there. And so got a few weeks before that first game to iron some of those things out. But I think, like you said in the beginning, the two guys they've got that'll really be the leaders and have the ball in their hands the majority of the time are two guys who do have a lot of experience in this system. And so there's something to be said for that, to be a hopefully steadying influence while the rest of the guys kind of fill in around them.
Yeah, well said. All right, also here with us, he's a longtime high school basketball coach in the state of Indiana, the founder of Delphi Bracketology, and a man who knows how to celebrate an epic victory in your rival's home gym.
Shafino!
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is the coach, Brian Tonsoni.
He remembers the days when a movie cost $1. Heaven help you if you ever decide to pop your collar. Play hard, but remember, fake hustle is a crime. He's the coach and it's Tonsoni time.
Coach, it's Tonsoni time. What's on your mind?
Well, I think I'm going to make a pledge tonight, fellas, that every time Malik Renew gets a double-double, I will be going and buying one of his burgers. And so I'm looking forward to tasting that. I don't know what the name of it is. Is it the Malik Burger or whatever?
I think it's the
Malik Renew burger. Yes,
the Malik Renew Burger. I will pledge a double-double. That's probably the significant moment of the media. I love going to media. I didn't travel to Minneapolis this year. You do get to find out about some things, but there's not a basketball coach who said at their media event their team sucks and didn't lift weights and didn't get stronger and didn't make advances. So it's the more I start covering this thing, the more I kind of just want to get through this and get to the exhibition games to where we can lay eyes on the actual play. But the thing that's good about media days is it just feeds that hunger that we have for any kind of basketball news. Trey Galloway looks just remarkably fit, and he looks focused. I don't know if that's such a thing. Coach Marlowe is salivating here in the chat mob as we talk about Trey Galloway's role on this team. And then I also want to give a shout out to volleyball for beating Purdue, for playing Nebraska tough, and really a shout out to all of the Hoosier fans that are filling Wilkinson Hall. What an atmosphere to see, and highlights, and the student body. It's just fantastic to see Coach Aird building that up, and then getting some recruits on top of that. So again, an Indiana program headed in the right direction. Fall baseball is going well from everything that we can tell. So again, we're all excited about basketball. Ordered my floating head schedule posters today. It's so close, and we can just feel it, and the excitement is building. So a lot to talk about, a lot to wonder about until we see the guys and the gals on the court.
Absolutely. All right, well, here's what we have in store this week. Segment 1, we'll go through our Hoosier headlines, congratulate our friends at Crimson Cast for hitting their 1,000th episode, and then also do a little recruiting reset here on – with some big decisions coming up. In segment 2, we're going to react to Big Ten Media Day and some of the preseason Big Ten polls. And then in segment 3, we will answer your questions in the mailbag. All of that coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. But first, let's talk about our presenting sponsor.
Home field apparel, wear one for the team.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This edition of Assembly Call Radio, just like all shows on the Back Home Network, presented by our friends at Home Field Apparel, where they have the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you will find anywhere. And as you have probably noticed when you've been outside, the calendar is turning, the weather is changing, the leaves are changing color, and it's starting to become that type of weather when you can wear the crew necks again, you can wear the hoodies again. Coach, you seem to be wearing a Home Field Apparel hoodie. Auburn? That's an
Not
opponent.
Auburn.
What are you doing? I thought it was Virginia.
No,
Whoops.
it's Auburn. It matches my sweatpants, and I know I'm an ugly dude, but I just have to match. I got some navy blue sweatpants on. I should have changed for the show.
Well, you look incredibly comfortable, and that's the thing. You wear Home Field
I am.
apparel. You get to support, college sports teams, even teams that your team is going to be playing this season. And obviously, you're supporting a great Indiana-based company that came up through Kelly. They do so many great things, just for everybody that works for them and for all of us who follow them and who order from them. And now's a great time to go. If you want to get kind of an early jump on your Christmas shopping, go to homefieldapparel.com. You can use our promo code HOME23, and you'll get 15% off your entire first order. That is promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Homefieldapparel.com. They've got a little something for everybody, anyone who's a college sports fan. So go there. The website again, homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. Okay. Before we get to Hoosier headlines, I want to take just a brief moment and make a short statement about the significant world headline that has hit very close to home for many of us, even if it is occurring thousands of miles away. And that is, of course, this week's savage surprise attack by Hamas on Israel and the resulting brutal ongoing conflict that is putting so many innocent civilians in harm's way, or unfortunately much, much worse. My mom's side of the family is Jewish. My business partner's wife was in Jerusalem when the attack occurred. Fortunately, she was able to return home safely, but those personal connections and others have obviously made it hard to focus on much else this week. I know the same goes for a lot of you. And even just in our little Assembly Call community and the IU sports community more broadly, there are connections to these tragic events, from our producer Ari to community members like Jim and Ethan to members of the IU content community like Eric Pankowski and athletes like women's basketball player Yarden Garzone. This has been a week of anguish and anger and sadness and fear and uncertainty. And we, all of us here at the Assembly Call, just want you to know that you are seen, you are heard, you're cared about and understood in so much as we are able to understand what you are going through. And while my personal connections are much more on the Israeli side of this conflict, at the end of the day, we are all human beings who just want to be protected, to be loved, and to be given the opportunity to pursue happiness and fulfillment. So it is not hard to condemn indiscriminate terror of any kind and feel great empathy and sorrow for any innocent person who is going through one of the most horrific experiences a human being can endure. We talk about a lot of silly stuff on the show, and it's a fun and useful diversion, but weeks like this one really put things into perspective. We are so very fortunate to have the luxury of spending 2 hours here chatting about a basketball team. So it seems useful to take at least a few moments to think about and empathize with those who don't. So, thank you, Andy and Coach and Ryan, for listening, or thank you everybody here for listening. Thank you guys for your support. And also, I just saw Ari texted me that tomorrow Hoosier Hysterics are doing a special episode with Yarden Garzone, which obviously will be one that'll be, very, very interesting to listen to get, their perspectives on this and much, much more. So anyway, just want to say that. Thank you for listening. And now we will make the most awkward transition in the history of the show and get back to talking hoops. All right, guys, I think we should probably start by congratulating our friends at Crimson Cast on reaching 1,000 episodes. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to their to their show that they put out earlier today. They kind of went through the history of their show, what got them started, all of that, and then kind of talk through, spend an hour, talking through the men's basketball team, and I know, look, we say a lot of things and kind of joke, back and forth with those guys, but I think I speak on behalf of all of us, and obviously I'll let you guys speak on this too. Just heartfelt appreciation for what they've meant for the IU, podcasting community. They've been a real example for us. We've looked up to them and tried to follow their example, and no one's done it better. No one's done it longer than those guys. And, if you've hosted a podcast, you know how special hitting 1,000 episodes is. So, we just want to congratulate those guys because it's awesome. Make sure you listen to that episode. It's really, really good. Crimson Cast they're the best. They're the OGs. And so we're just really proud of them and really excited they were able to make that milestone. Do you, Andy, you want to say some words about
Yeah, sure. I did get a chance to listen to it today. I think I'd heard bits and pieces of kind of how they started doing it, but they delved a little bit more into that at the beginning of the show. Got more in depth on the Egyptian hacker scenario that they have described on multiple occasions that lost some of their episodes to the annals of time. But no, just I mean, anybody who's talked as much about IU football as they have over those 1,000 episodes deserves kudos at the very least for doing that. But it was funny. They were talking through some of that. I remember I stumbled upon them in one of the first couple of Crean years, and have kind of stuck with them ever since, and really enjoyed their perspective and things like that. And I think some of the origin of what they talked about is a little bit of what kind of we talk about the same stuff. It's like I think I forget who said it, but it was like you're just kind of talking about basketball with your friend, and other people are listening, and some of that stuff. I think if we can emulate some of that, then all the better for everybody involved. But certainly enjoyed the episode. Good to hear them talk a little bit about the basketball season. Also probably good for them to have a bit of a diversion from talking about the football team, and we go from there. But no, congrats to those guys. Awesome partners on the Back Home Network, or the Home Network, as Scott likes to call it. And so happy to have them aboard and share the airwaves with them. It's always a good time.
My favorite part of the episode, in addition to Scott's admission that he's never beaten Castlevania, was the trip down memory lane of the intense recruiting battle for Hunter Perea between Indiana and Central Michigan. Which, when you get to that part, it made me laugh. Coach, and then, by the way, I think Scott might have coined a new tagline for us. I'm going to play that audio in a second, but Coach, I want to give you a chance to say something about them too.
Yeah, it's just nice to be associated with Crimson Cast. They do good work. I have not had the chance to listen to the episode yet today, but will going into this weekend. It's just I will second what Andy says. They do a very good job of covering a tough situation right now in Indiana football. They had a couple years where it wasn't. It was kind of fun to podcast about, and they just give a really good analysis. I think fair analysis of what's going on. So congratulations. It's amazing to hit 1,000 as a podcast. It speaks for the fan base that they have created, and the Indiana fan base that we like good information, and we like good people, and that's what Crimson Cast is all about.
They sure are. And obviously, what I've always respected is the way Galen has used his platform to give students opportunities to get experience and, to build their name and grow their audience and attention. And so it's great. So here's the audio. This is the part where, again, I think Scott may have coined our new tagline. I'm going to play this here real quick. And this is where they were kind of talking, Andy, about how their show was set up. And, it's great to just be able to go, talk with your friends, like you're just talking on the phone. Here's what Scott said.
It's funny how life turns out, because now as you get older, you have kids. It's like, I think this works way better for our lifestyle than it's like, you and I talk privately, but I'll say just a little public. There's times where I'm like, man, I feel bad for Jared. It's like Tuesday night, Thursday, like they'll have 4 games in 8 days. It's like, man, that's tough. They gotta hop on and they gotta do it. But such is the life they picked. But no, I love doing this with you. It's been awesome. And let's get to 2,000, man. Let's go for 2,500.
Very curious what else they say about us in these private conversations, but there's the line. Such is the life that they picked. We are telling you all here in the offseason, remember this, when we inevitably complain about 4 shows and 8 nights this season, it's our damn fault, and we love it. So just tell us to shut up because...
Such is the life they picked.
Yes, exactly. So thank you for that real talk, Scott. We appreciate it. Appreciate the reminder. Gentlemen, let's talk about recruiting. Liam McNeely is set to make his announcement on Sunday. We're not going to get into the whole scouting report stuff. If the announcement goes our way, we will have an emergency podcast. It's Sunday and there's no set time yet, so it's a little bit difficult to plan. As you know, we'll do our best to go live like right after the announcement, but we've got people coming over to do pumpkin carving, and there's some different things going on here on Sunday. So who knows if it'll happen right after. But if you want to kind of track what's happening with him this weekend, he and his Montverde team are playing in the Top Flight Invitational as the Florida Eagles. That's the team with Cooper Flagg, Derek Queen, Curtis Givens. They are favored to do very well in this tournament. Their first game is Friday at 10:45 Eastern time, late start, on ESPN Plus. They play again Saturday, and then they'll play Sunday at either 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or 9 o'clock, depending on how they do. The game will be on ESPNU if it's in the 5 or 7 o'clock window. It'll be on ESPN2 in the title game. Now, sometimes at these events, players have made their announcement, at halftime of the game or before the game. As soon as we find out word of when it'll be, we'll post it in the community. I'm sure I'll, tweet it, all that stuff. We just don't know yet. But the decision is expected to come on Sunday. And again, as I said in the banner moment, whether it was last week or the week before, I continue to feel confident approaching the decision. Nothing's guaranteed, but the fact that Kansas just got a commitment from Raquise Passmore, who is another wing, is kind of another data point that would seem to be in favor of Indiana, along with all of the Indiana players in his mentions on Instagram and other things. So a lot of signs pointing toward Indiana. Again, nothing set in stone. But Andy, do you have any thoughts as we approach finally the commitment of Liam McNeely and find out where he's going to go?
I mean, glad to get it out of the way before the season, at least. It has provided some content to kind of bridge the gap between the doldrums of the summer into the regular season. So I guess that's a good thing. But no other feelings. I mean, like you said, seems like the news continues to be pretty positive, but you never know until they actually make the announcement. And even then, there's certainly been instances where people haven't followed through on that. But it seems like things are pointing in a good direction. So hopefully that'll happen. Although you did say, nothing is planned. Well, you can't plan an emergency. So you can't plan the emergency podcast, unfortunately. So
we should probably start calling those like celebratory, maybe that would be a little, but it does. When you get a 5-star, it does seem,
I mean,
it's obviously very urgent.
For sure.
Very urgent. Okay, let's also talk about Boogie Fland. His announcement, there's no set timetable, but his announcement is expected soon. Now, whether that comes, later this week or next, no one's exactly sure. There's kind of been some thought that he was waiting until his coach gets back from vacation, which I believe is supposed to happen Monday, something like that. So no one's exactly sure. That one, again, seems to be from various sources, seems to be down to Indiana and Kentucky. Even though he has a Final 3 of Alabama, it seems like Nate Oates may have been in the wrong place at the wrong time in this recruitment. So I'm not sure they're really still in it. But Coach, I don't know if you heard this audio, but there was a great interview with Boogie Fland. He was out at the Team USA event this week, and he sat down for an interview with Kristen Peak of Yahoo Sports and Rivals. The whole thing is really good. It's like 4.5 minutes long. He talks about, what the coaches have told him and what he's looking for. So the whole thing is really good. But there's a particular clip that kind of went viral in Indiana circles, and I clipped that audio. I want to play it, and then, Coach, I want to get your reaction to it. So here is the first voice you're going to hear is Kristen Peak of Yahoo and Rivals asking Boogie a question. Then you'll hear Boogie after that. Here it is.
The NBA scouts, they're here watching you. They've seen you throughout the summer, but what are you hoping to show the growth in your game, this time around heading into your senior season?
That I'm a leader and I can stand out when I'm playing with good players. I feel like when you're playing with good players, your mindset is to score, do this, do that, just to stand out. Yeah. But I feel like there's more to basketball than just scoring and stuff like that, just getting everybody involved, make sure you're a good teammate, helping, clapping, doing the little things, because that's what they're looking for. Because when you go to the NBA, are you going to be the one scoring or just somebody already there that's going to be scoring, doing the scoring? So you got to do something different, Right. So, yeah.
With the NBA scouts, they're here
Coach,
watching
your
you.
reaction.
Sign me up. more. Play the whole 4 minutes and repeat. You have a talented young man who's a 5-star who has the wherewithal at least to say that, and I believe him, and I believe he understands that. That is so far removed from a lot of these top, a lot of athletes are, I want to score, I want to get mine, I'm looking forward to getting to the NBA. This guy seems to understand it. It's a complete package. It's not just stats. It's not just about himself, but it's about winning, and do you help other people get better? Because that's ultimately what will make a point guard in the NBA. The good point guards score sometimes, but they run the show. And so whoever's been, teaching him and helping him has really done a good job. And those are the type of 5-stars that, as a fan and as an alum of Indiana University, that I would like to have at Indiana. It's a fine edge in recruiting because you need that top-end talent. But we've also seen at the Dukes and the Kentuckys that some year you get 4 or 5 of the top-end talent, and it kind of doesn't mesh. The chemistry isn't there, so they don't. The parts are greater than the sum of the whole or the team, and that's always been my worry when you have. And I think we have to go that way, and I'm glad we are. But it can backfire too. You've seen number 1 draft picks; their team doesn't make the NCAA tournament. LSU, Washington has had some of those situations in the past. But man, when I heard this clip, I was like, "Sign me up! Give me some more Boogie now. Sign with us Monday if that's the case." Like I'm really excited about both of these, and I get really excited once they make the commitment. And he obviously has to live what he's talking about because words are just words, but you don't hear that an awful lot in the top era of basketball. And I think that's what makes, if he's there for a year or 2 years or whatever, that's what will make him. That's what made Jalen Hood-Schifino so good and why everyone loves his 1 year as opposed to some others that have come through possibly at one and done at IU. The guy wanted to win, and he wanted to play good team basketball while he was here. So that I'm super excited about his announcement.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And look, if things go according to plan, he's going to be playing with a lot of really good players next year at Indiana. And so I think just, hearing that mindset for a young player, the other thing too, Jeff Rabjohns, Adam Finkelstein of 24, I think he's 24/7, and others basically said, like, this isn't just like a one-time thing. This is who he is and who he's been for years. And it just all kind of was encapsulated in that soundbite. So I think really shows why the IU staff has been so high on him and why, he'd be a great fit here at Indiana. So those 2 decisions, again, Liam, we know when it's coming. It's on Sunday. Boogie, we don't, although there does seem to be an expectation that that could happen next week. So we'll keep you posted on that. As for Derek Queen, the other of the 3, there's not a timetable except, it seems to, I know, our buddy Rob Cassidy over at Rivals, posted that he was going to make the decision, before the November signing period. So I think he's got another visit to Maryland, his home state school, and so we wait to hear that. And I'm sure landing one of his best longtime friends, Liam, and a great point guard to get him the ball would certainly help Indiana's case. So we will keep you posted on those, but we are nearing the home stretch on those, and so we look forward to getting those decisions in. Just a couple other bullet points here. Coach already mentioned the floating head posters are out. Is this the first year they've done T-shirts? I've never seen the T-shirts before. Is that new?
I think it's new, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if they did it last year, but you can go to Indiana NIL Store. If you want to look them up on Twitter, it's at Indiana NIL Store or indiana.nil.store, and you can go find those, order them. A portion of the proceeds goes to the players, so it is does support Indiana's NIL activities, but I know many of you have been waiting for those to come. So those are out and ready for you. And I just want to echo what Coach said. Congratulations to IU Volleyball on beating a ranked Purdue team. Speaking of Crimson Cast, episode 999 was an interview with Steve Aird and then assistant coach Rachel Morris, kind of talking about, his vision for what he thought Indiana Volleyball could be when he was hired several years ago. And that vision is coming to fruition. You talk about Mike Woodson being hot on the recruiting trail. What do they have, like 4 or 5 5-stars signed up in the latest recruiting class? I mean, Steve Aird is building something special. Wilkinson Hall is rocking. And so definitely a bandwagon worth jumping on, because it really seems like something special is being built there. So congratulations to them, and we look forward to following their success moving forward. Okay, coming up on Assembly Call Radio, let's turn our attention to important Big Ten preseason matters. Big Ten Media Day and the release of the Big Ten preseason polls. We will react to those next. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right. Welcome, everybody who is here live. Nice to see a thriving live chat this evening. Chat Mob Chad is back. Chad Schwarzkopf. Great to have him here with us. Man, actually, Chad, I'm gonna send you the link, because we had talked about him coming on, and then I got all worked up today, and I forgot to send him the link. So I'm going to send it to you via text if you want to join us. My apologies for that. If I can find the text thread. Anyway, Andy, Coach, how are you guys doing? Any notable events in your lives happening right now? Sorry, that was an awkward question. I was trying to buy time while I'm looking for chat. I'm looking to send this to chat.
I would say no is for me. Nothing.
Just make one up then.
Nothing notable happening. Yeah, I'll work on it.
I'm just kidding. All right, Chad, I just emailed that to you. Come hop on with us if you want to. It'd be great to have you. Okay, well, let's hop in then and start talking Big Ten Media Day. And I may have pulled some funny audio of Coach Woodson talking about Malik Renew's burger, which has to be just one of the absolute high points of any media day session ever. It's just so great. So great. I always love it when Mariah, his daughter, will like retweet something he says with like just a laughing face, or, you know, it's like, that's what happens. Your daughters, you know, they can call you out on social media.
Absolutely.
All right, here we go.
Hi, this is Lily King. I hope you enjoy the show, but ask yourself, do we really need this much basketball talk for a swimming and diving school? Where do you think the candy stripes came from anyway? Go Hoosiers!
Alrighty, thank you, Lily. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I am Jared Morris here with Coach Brian Tonsoni and Andy Bottoms. And guys, you know the season is getting closer when not just Indiana Media Day happens, but Big Ten Media Day happens. You start getting the unofficial, official preseason poll that comes out. And so we are going to talk about those because both those things happened this week. And let's start with some Big Ten media takeaways. Very curious to see, you know, what you guys kind of took away. You know, I would say the first thing that really jumped out to me was, you know, Coach Woodson said, quote, "Make no mistake about it. I say it. You guys probably couldn't see it and didn't write about it enough, but losing Xavier Johnson last year was huge for our team. I mean, it hurt us." This was echoed by Trey Galloway. Coach, I can assure you, it was mentioned several times on this show. Maybe every show has been mentioned several times this offseason. We absolutely knew that. Everybody paying attention absolutely knew that. It is absolutely one of just the most brain-dead pieces of analysis about IU basketball that I've ever heard, that somehow that helped Indiana last year. It did not. It may have given Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trace Jackson Davis the impetus to expand their game, but it did not help Indiana overall as a team because of what it did for the defense. And, Coach, that was really kind of the theme that I heard from Coach Woodson and from your tone setters, Xavier Johnson and Trey Galloway. This team's identity will still be defense. And I think, you know, even losing your rim protector, Trace Jackson Davis, and kind of, you know, a guy who'd been a bit of a defensive Swiss Army knife and Race Thompson throughout his career, having those two guys up top leading the defense is going to give you a defensive identity, and we know that's what Coach Woodson wants.
Well, that's the identity, and that's what he wants, and then they have to execute it. You know, the on-ball defense is going to be much better. I thought Jalen Hood-Schifino had a good year last year, but I thought he struggled at times guarding the bounce, especially the starting point guard or the main driver of the basketball for the other team. So I'm really excited. I think the defense will be improved in that area. I think together it's been an off-season concern of mine, Andy, that when you have so many new pieces and you have this fit of our best players being bigger, at the 3, bigger at the 4, those types of things. It's the positioning. Miller Kopp was constantly in the right position. Race Thompson did all the dirty little things defensively that kind of go unnoticed. So meshing that together in order to play and get back to a top 25 defense, I think Indiana KenPom was 24 in Woodson's first year and then fell to like 40 or 42 last year. So there's some pluses and minuses. I think you get back to X with his on-ball defense is a positive. I do think the back line defense, and so which one counterbalances the other, and can Indiana move back into the top 25? I think that's my concern. But I enjoy Coach Woodson wanting to have an identity of defense, because that ultimately is what's going to have Indiana get to the Sweet 16, the Final Four. You got to be able to guard.
Yeah, and I think that continues to come up. Galloway, I think, brought it up in some of his comments as well, just about the identity of this team really being on the defensive end. I think that's probably not just paying lip service to what Mike Woodson wants to hear, I'm sure. But, I think you look at, again, as you said, some things maybe tough to figure out early on in the back line, how those guys play together, how they play together defensively in particular. But I think you can paper over a little bit of that with really good ball pressure on the outside. If you're able to really cut down on, really make it hard for guys to see, hard for them to get the ball where they want. And so having guys like Galloway and X should help with that. And maybe that perimeter, pressure and defense can at least give the other things time to catch up. Now, the flip side of that is, and I think you could probably make this argument a little bit about Jalen, although he got into foul trouble occasionally. I think he was in a position last year where probably couldn't be as aggressive defensively as he wanted to be, or maybe they needed him to be, because you're just trying to stay on the floor. And that's something that X has had trouble with over the course of time, trying to not get him in foul trouble. Everybody's excited about Gabe Cupps, but I think if you put him in a position where he's really having to play major minutes because X is getting handsy and finding himself in foul trouble and things like that. So he's got to figure out the way to strike the balance between being the disruptor that he needs to be and that he can be, while also making sure that he's staying on the court and not getting himself in foul trouble. But I think that'll be pretty critical. And but yeah, that's the potential downside of having a guy who's really aggressive and kind of a ball hawk at that position.
As a coach, you can stress defense and coach defense and say your identity is defense, and then those things like foul trouble and too aggressive with your hands and the depth. When Gabe Cupps comes in and puts pressure on the ball, no offense to Gabe, but that's going to be different than Xavier, right? When you have, I think the backup posts are going to be pretty solid defensively, just from a physical standpoint, but the emphasis has to be there, but then it's got to follow with execution, right? You can, coach, you can affect that only so much. And then we also have word, Andy, by the way, if you're watching live, Teddy has gotten up in the bedroom, and Jared had to go get him back to bed. So now it's just Andy and I for the time being. But there's some injuries popping up, Andy. Khalil Ware missed a pro day with a shoulder that he hurt in practice. Caleb Banks has a groin injury, and then Walker sprained an ankle. How do you read that when you hear of these injuries early? They're bound to happen when you get guys on the floor and you're working. You're going to have injuries. I don't think any of them are major where you're going to miss time yet, but as we get excited about this season and the depth, and I read that on the run sheet, I was unaware of that until this afternoon. What goes through your mind when you read that? What are the concerns injury-wise and depth-wise for this team as we know it right now?
Yeah, like you said, I don't think any of them seem to be major things at this point. I think Ware's struck me as mostly precautionary, at least based on kind of what they said about that. I think the one of those, dependent upon the severity of it, that could linger a little bit, is the Caleb Banks one. Walker sprained ankle, should be able to get back at it, but with the groin issue with Caleb Banks, depending upon what that is, don't want to rush him back. So it's something that lingers throughout the season, and I think it really calls into play. This team didn't use that extra scholarship, which I think is fine given the way that they were, recruiting. But you're down that, and Ja'Kai Newton seems unlikely to be able to contribute from a health perspective. So you're, not as deep as you'd probably like to be, and in some ways, we always talk about, how are you going to find minutes for all these guys? Like, you don't necessarily want injuries to be the thing that sorts out how you get minutes for people. While it might make it a little bit easier on you from a coaching perspective, it's not really what you want to be the driver of that. So, hopefully just minor stuff as they really get going, and certainly have faith they're going to manage it correctly. But I do think it calls into question, all three of these guys are frontline players. I know with Banks, he can play the three a bit as well, but good to have depth because you still got, even in this scenario, you got a Malik Renew and a Peyton Sparks and Mackenzie Mbako. You've got some guys still there, but while we feel good about the depth in some ways on this team, like, it only takes a couple injuries for you to start to look at that a little bit differently as you go. But again, I think a lot of this hopefully is just precautionary and kind of early season stuff they'll be able to shake off pretty quickly.
And more so than worrying about games, for me as a coach, worrying about practice for those guys getting up to speed in what you want to accomplish this year, but then also in helping each other get better. Appreciate all the walk-ons, and we have a few new walk-ons that we'll get familiar with. But you want the best going up against the best in practice, and when they have to sit out, then that takes away some of the quality of your practice. So hopefully these injuries are just minor, and there's only a couple missed practices. Right now, we'd like to welcome Chad Schwarzkopf to the show. Chad, a long time we haven't had you on the show and talked to you. How are you doing, and how are you feeling after media days, Big Ten media days, and your Indiana Hoosiers?
Pretty good about Indiana. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on and everything. Had to wear Ryan's hat for him, show that he's here in presence and everything.
I mean, between you and Richie, you really probably going a little bit over the top with some of the support of Ryan, but that's fine.
I won't be as grumpy, or I won't rant as much as he does, though. I promise that. No, media day was fun. Always good to get a little insight from the players and just see them because it's our two captains. I mean, our two captains out there representing the team and everything. Always the fun little tidbits and little things that they do on the outside. I don't know if you've mentioned this yet, but if we ever get to Trey Galloway, we need to ask him to explain why he knows Leonardo DiCaprio. Evidently, he's got him. He's the most famous person that he has in his phone. I don't know if you saw that media day, little behind the scenes thing. That's very interesting. I guess we can't really take him serious, too, because Trey Galloway is known to be a little bit of a jokester, too, so that could have definitely been a joke from him. Also learning that Coach is pretty oblivious to the NIL doings of the players, unaware that Malik has his own burger, and slightly disappointing that he's eating hamburgers, although, yes, Malik has definitely trimmed down in the offseason and gotten his body in better shape, mobility and everything wise, but just this little bit of insights here and there, but there's always a slight bit of disappointment from some of the media days as well, because it's coach speak, it's media
right.
speak, so you don't get a lot of that extra insight and stuff that the juicy stuff you'd like to hear.
So we started off with defense. Let's turn it to a little bit of offense, Andy. Coach has said multiple times and at media that he's still trying to figure out what they're going to do offensively. Your thoughts about the offense heading into the season and what we've kind of heard from the media reports?
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with Chad where you get so much coach speak on some of these. Woodson isn't. I mean, he'll weave some cliched stuff in there, but he does feel like at least gives you a little bit of something. I thought. Yeah, that was one of the things talking about offensively on the Big Ten Network interview that he did, and just kind of talked about, we ran more pick and roll than straight post ups, last year, and just kind of how he said there'll be different ways that they play, and really reiterated what I think a lot of us had thought in terms of, they played the way they did because they had Trace, and that was really what gave them the best chance to win. May or may not be how he really wants to play, although he was pretty quick to say, we're not going to get away from having guys post up, but did seem to at least suggest there'll be a little bit more variability with what they do offensively and have some different options, just given the personnel this year. So, and it's one of those things where he's kind of saying the right thing. I think everybody from a fan's perspective at the end of the season said it's been awesome to have Trace, great career, love watching him play. But what are we going to see offensively, and how does it change? Because I don't think, the way that he was doing that really sustainable in modern college basketball. And so, he's certainly saying the things that I think people will be excited to hear. What remains to be seen whether that happens on the court. But I think, given the personnel, some different lineup combinations it can play, being able to spread things around a little bit offensively does seem to suggest we'll see more of that. But we'll see when the rubber meets the road, how much he wants to deviate from some of those kinds of things. But that was, and it seemed like he's still trying to figure that out. I think he said that even coming in when he started, spent tons of time on getting things right defensively. That's always been his priority. That's what he's talked about. And I would guess this year with so many new faces, not really all that different. He's spent a ton of time trying to get the fundamentals and the things that they want to do defensively in place, and then we'll move to offense. And so probably something we'll see evolve over the course of the year.
It's just interesting to see to be able to see here soon what he does mean by playing a different way or with the talent. They were 90th in offensive efficiency his first year, and then moved up to 28th. Was that what we did, or just because you had a couple pros who played outstanding basketball? But I did like the comment to Chad that he said that they're likely to shoot more threes. I think that's in relation to what you were talking about, Andy. And I also I don't know who said this or what report that I saw that, boy, Mbako can really shoot it. Boy, that would be really good if that was actually what happens this year at that 3 spot, because if he can shoot it, and I don't think he has to be Miller Kopp shooting, but if he could shoot and have that role plus the athleticism to drive it, to post it, that gives a lot of flexibility for the coaches at the 3. Chad, your thoughts on offensively and things that you might have heard in that media about the fact that they're just still trying to figure out what they're going to be doing here offensively this season.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of alluded to that with there is coaches speak, but I do like that, again, that Woodson is very blunt with it and saying that he's figuring things out. But to kind of continue on what you were saying with the 3-point shooting, I think that's an exciting and different thing we're going to see this year because of hopefully what McKenzie can do. There has been plenty of tape and film that we've seen at Oregon and as well in some high-end tournament situations where Ware has been able to get out and make a few threes. So that's going to be interesting as well. Not to mention the big leap that Trey had from the previous year in the offseason to what he did last year from the 3-point range was considerably increased. And then what we're hearing from people, I think just either it was today or yesterday in an interview, Xavier Johnson was talking about how much improved he's seeing Trey. So I think Trey, and as well, we know this as well, is that this is his very first healthy offseason to improve as well. So I think we've been concerned leading into this summer about the 2 position and what that's going to be. And obviously you guys spoke a little bit earlier about the depth to that. But I think with what Trey's going to be able to bring and those other outside guys and just X getting better, I think the outside shooting is going to be a lot more prevalent this year. And I think Coach even said that we're going to, or somewhere I remember seeing that we're going to take a lot more high volume of threes this year.
Justin in the chat says he can hear Jared singing a lullaby. We actually asked him, and he sings the fight song to Teddy. So he's still with us in spirit on the show, singing the IU fight song, trying to get Teddy to go back to sleep. And so he can rejoin the show. But fellas, the media then votes on their players, the all preseason Big Ten teams and those types of awards, and then obviously gives out a 1 through 14 ranking of the team. Our Indiana Hoosiers were picked 6th in the Big Ten this year. We've seen a wide variety of predictions. I think I've seen everything from 3 down to 11 by various people. I think those 2 numbers are the extreme. But Andy, how did you take Indiana being 6th by the media in the Big Ten preseason poll? Andy,
Sorry.
there you go.
Sorry, it's certainly reasonable. I think when you look, and we've talked about this all offseason, there's a pretty wide range of outcomes for this team. And so if you end up putting them toward the low end of that, the tier once you get past Purdue and Michigan State, I think anywhere within that, there's not a ton of difference. I've kept track of a handful of the predictions that have come out, kind of averaged them out. IU averages out right about 6, just behind Wisconsin, at least in the few that I've looked at. And what you've really got in the ones that I've tracked is you got Purdue a unanimous number 1, Michigan State a unanimous number 2, and then you've really got Maryland and Illinois seem to be most commonly mentioned in the 3-4 range, and IU and Wisconsin most commonly in the 5-6 range, and then there's ever so slight gap between them and Ohio State, and then you drop a little bit to like a Northwestern and Iowa, Rutgers from there. So no huge qualms about it. If you picked them third, you're definitely taking the really optimistic, things come together really well tact, and if you pick them closer to 6th or 7th, you're probably being a little more pragmatic about it and maybe being more conservative in that way. So no huge surprises really for me within the order that they had the teams. It didn't seem like.
Ted, your thought in the order where Indiana fell at 6?
I think that makes sense. As we've kind of debated it all, and you've seen on Twitter, on all the different boards and everything, there's too many questions right now with this Indiana team until we see them on the court. And it just depends on what kind of Hoosier fan you are. We run the gamut of pessimist to optimist, and the optimist will put you at 3. The pessimist will put you at 9, 10. So 6 sounds about right with the current numbers and facts and things and questions, numerous that they are, that we have as about this team. So I lean myself personally more towards the optimistic side. 3 seems a little tough. I'll put them about 4. But like you said, it's going to possibly be, until things are worked out, another year in the Big Ten where it's going to be pretty thick in the middle. So little game swing here and there. This game on Peacock, that game on Big Ten Plus. We'll see how the things shuffle themselves out. It could vary by a weird foul call. Could be the difference between 4th place and 6th place in the Big Ten. So there's going to be a very minuscule factor of error that's going to change that middle ground of the Big Ten, I think, this season.
And we saw that last year with Northwestern, the last game. If they won, they were the 2 seed. If they lost, they were the 9 seed. I do think there will be some of that. I think the tier system, Andy, that you talked about, I think that's kind of the best way to look at it. And a lot of people are going to look at what's coming back. That's why IU tends to be the 6, 7, 8. And if you go a lot lower, those predictions are because Indiana doesn't have a lot coming back. And then, I would say don't get mad at those. Just understand that their criteria is number of returning points, number of returning players, and Indiana just statistically doesn't match up. That's probably how those decisions are being made. It has nothing to do with talent. So I kind of dismiss that a little bit. And I think it's hard to know just exactly how the talent's going to fit in. We look at Mbako and we look at Ware, and we know a lot more than a lot of people making these predictions know about that. But I do think I would encourage all of us this too, that no matter what tier Indiana is in the rankings, there are always teams that pop and move up, and there are always teams that struggle due to injury, whatever, lose some close games and drop. Ohio State was an example of that last year. Predicted to be much better, fell. Michigan, the last 2 years, predicted in the top 2 or 3 and fell all the way down to 9 2 years in a row. Northwestern, Rutgers popped and went up. And so I think I'm going to put together a little my predictions on a coach's corner for the community, and I'm going to use tiers, and then I'm going to say team likely to move up and team likely to move down out of that tier. And I think if you put Indiana in that 5, 6, 7 range, I think they're a candidate to move up if all of the talent and everything clicks together. And I think they may also be a candidate to move down if there aren't enough basketballs and it doesn't gel as a team. And I think that's the wide range that we have currently for Indiana. But I think the tier system, and then, don't get caught up in where Indiana is. Get caught up in what would move them up and what potentially can move them down. And as the season progresses, we can analyze that a little bit better. Andy, anything else stick out? We had, I think, freshman of the year is likely to be Mbako. Was that officially voted on? I know it's in the run sheet, but I'm not sure if that was officially. And then Kalel Ware mentioned as a transfer, right?
Yeah, I think they have him vote on a bunch of stuff. I don't think the league came out with their 10-person, first team, which is ridiculous. But but they don't do the act. That's why it's the old official, unofficial, because the league doesn't want to. Is literally the only league that won't have people vote on some of this stuff and then publish it. But I think that was all part of the same panel that Brendan Quinn, I think, runs. So. Mbako was the projected freshman of the year. Ace Baldwin at Penn State, the transfer of the year. Great that we have to have transfer of the year now. And then I don't know who the person is that gave Tyson Walker the player of the year vote, but might be getting too cute with it. Just,
Yeah, Edie as player of the year is probably a given. Hopefully we can vote for other people. That would be good news coming out of the North.
We need to gloss over the first and second teams before Jared gets back, because the Keisei Tominaga on the second team is probably going to get him fired up again here.
What's he on? Is that is it?
That's what he has in here further down in the run sheet. Yeah.
Casey Tominaga, is that
Tominaga? Yeah. But the first team though, you got Edie, Jameer Young, Terrence Shannon, Tyson Walker, and Boo Buie. So kind of a sharp left turn from big guys were the whole first team last year, and now it's largely guard driven. I guess maybe the pendulum just swings the other way. But you had that, and then I think Omaruyi was the kind of sixth guy, and I think Alex and Inside the Hall had kind of said the top six are pretty clear. In the league, you can, have somebody one place or up or down to be on the first team or not. But the after that's where it starts to get a little bit more interesting, at least.
Thanks for softball tossing up my Bob Thompson comment. It's a guards game, and there's good guards in the Big Ten, so that might speak well for the success of the Big Ten this season and in the tournament. And it also, I think there were, so if you look at honorable mention. Couple point guards in honorable mention, including Xavier Johnson and that little guy from Purdue was honorable mention as well. But I would also encourage everyone on these, you want to be on these lists at the end of the year. Again, all of the media are looking at how many points you scored last year. Some of them may look at the defensive statistics, but they're looking at how many years did you play, what did your team do, and how many points did you score last year. And that's why X doesn't get a lot of – I'll defend Jared here a little bit on X, but we don't know about X, and neither does all of the media, and that's why they would put him as the fifth, sixth guard in the Big Ten. So then I kind of like that because I think X is a competitor. I think he's going to get pissed off at all that and want to go out and play the type of basketball that'll move him up to be one of the top guards. As Jared will fill in, Jared believes he should be on the first team. Chad, any thoughts about all of those awards, the player stuff coming out of media, as far as it's Indiana or just in general about the league?
It's just content, Phil, for the off season. We're looking for stuff to talk about and everything like that. And honestly, I will say, at least from an IU perspective and everything, call it superstition or whatever, what you will. But I feel like we tend to do better as a team when those expectations aren't high going into the season, where there's that little bit of chip on our shoulders, especially like you just mentioned with X. He's really that kind of chip kind of guy. And it's just, they can just concentrate on playing and everything. And, they say they don't look at that stuff, but kids look at those things and they're looking at lists and stuff like that. And, not being on it, I'll take not being on it and fueling you to show someone, that you deserve to be on that list more so than, being put on that list and then kind of relaxing or falling back on your laurels, like, yes, I'm the stud. I belong on that list, kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's exactly as you laid it out. It's looking at potential as to what they did the season before and what they project them to do. And I just look for the end of the season lists when those come out, and hope we have a few guys that show up then.
And to end our segment 2 here, the national rankings are out, and Indiana's in the 30s in most rankings. Andy, what kind of weight do you put into that, and is that a deserving situation? And then the follow-up for both of you is then, do you guys feel we're on a path to get back to when we have a rebuilding year, when we lose 4 starters, we are one of the top 20 teams? You know, you have those teams, Kansas, Duke, those Blue Bloods, and even Michigan State, when they've lost some good talent, they're always ranked. Do we have to, are we close to getting back? Is it Liam and Boogie coming that all of a sudden now, no matter what we do, Indiana's going to be thought of as a top 20, 25 team? We obviously are getting discounted because we lost 2 pros and we have a bunch of new guys coming in. So I guess that's a lot of questions thrown into one. Andy, just take it whatever direction you want there.
Yeah, I think it's probably, I mean, to a certain extent, it kind of boils down to the same thing. Whether you're talking about the more, model-driven approaches where you've got a Torvik or Evan Miyakawa. His came out today. They're 31st. I think, those things are building. While it is looking at your team this year, there's a historical component that has to go into there. The same thing will hold true when KenPom updates and comes out. And some of that is you've got 2 years of Mike Woodson. How is he able to adapt without a Trace Jackson Davis? How is he able to do those things? Some of those things, eventually the performance gets baked into some of those models a little bit. I think that we'll handle that part. And certainly if you recruit at a higher level, any of those guys, if you listen in, they talk about the importance of getting 5-star guys and what that really does. Kind of the weight that they give that in their models. And I think a little bit of the same thing holds true to the more, human opinion based ones where you're looking at what ESPN has or a Fox Sports or CBS top 25 and 1, stuff like that. I mean, I think there's still a need to kind of demonstrate, all right, Mike Woodson can win in different ways with different kinds of teams and different personnel. And I don't necessarily blame anybody for maybe being skeptical in those scenarios. He's had very specific kind of team for 2 years and has made it work to his credit and has made adjustments in a year like last year to his credit. But I do think there's a little bit of that element as well. I know the guys at 3-Man Weave are ones that I really look at a lot because they watch so much. When they did their countdown, I think IU was 30th, which ultimately feels about right. And Coach, I know you bring this up a lot when we're, talking through bracketology things on here. You're like, that's an 8 seed. Does that feel about right? Probably. I think I forget who. I think Jared put it in here. I think in the Almanac they had a preseason bracketology. They were a 9 seed. I think in Lenardi had another one out this week. I think they were at 9. Maybe they were 10 in that. They were 9 or 10, right in that range. So kind of feels about right when you look at the questions and some of those kinds of things. So no qualms for me about it, really.
Chad, your thoughts on the preseason rankings of the Indiana Hoosiers?
I think it's the same thing as the Big Ten. It's, again, just people not knowing what the questions are, and then Andy kind of hit that second part of your question, or maybe it was the third or fourth or fifth. I don't remember part. But just kind of it's again. I think that just comes down to Woodson. They got to see that when you have a good amount of players and starters and a percentage of your points leaving. He's got to prove it not only as a coach, but as a recruiter that he can replenish that inside and out. And a Liam and a Boogie and a Queen will definitely do a lot to push it that way. And I don't think we are talking about then, if we have that talent, then obviously you could talk about being pre-ranked next year. But I don't think that just that affords him moving forward a high ranking. I think he's got to put a few more years under his belt before he really gets that nod. And we've also kind of known, and again, this is falling back on the laurels of insane Hoosier Nation that we are, national media and a lot of those polls and stuff, Tarvik and all the analytic polls aside, IU's not up there in their brains anymore. And IU has to do a few things to shake that tree and get in their eyes a lot more and be considered in the offseason and remembered and everything. And that's going to be a few tournament runs and other things like that to prove it again and be, this is loaded to say this, but be more nationally relevant to get that recognition and that kind of general nod and I guess favoritism to a degree in those preseason polls to think the positive more out of a team than the negative.
I think we're headed into that respect area where you know we put a good year together and get to the tournament and possibly get to the Sweet 16. Even if we don't get there, but 3 years in a row in the tournament, we get back in the minds of people as being a relevant program. And I do like the word relevant with this rebuild, if you would, with all the new guys. The talent brought in by Woodson has been really, really good for a team that loses 2 guys to the NBA and 2 other seniors who've played lots of basketball. Normally, you take a step back and you fight. You're going to be fighting for that, 10, 11 seed, and you'd just be glad just to make the tournament. And I think we're comfortably in the tournament if everyone's predicting us at the 7, 8, 9, 10 seed line. So normally you'd be in the 40s, I think, with that kind of loss of playing time and experience. So I think Coach Woodson should get a lot of credit for bringing in the talent. We just got to win games now. And I think, if we hear Sunday and Monday or whenever the 2 guys are going to announce and it's positive for Indiana, I do think you're going to just start seeing that move in the positive direction. So again, take preseason rankings. Don't take it as a grievance. Don't get all too worked up. Be a little disappointed maybe, and just understand that gives all of us a lot to talk about when we move up at the end of the year. Okay, so coming up on Assembly Call Radio, it'll be mailbag time. We got some great questions. We'll answer all of them next, so stick with us here on the Assembly Call. Hey, did that music come through? I know Jared was the one who started the podcast. I think I'm on the Assembly Call.
Yeah, it did.
Anyway,
yeah, you're good.
Dominic, you've been a long time follower of the show, dude. I collect the gear, so I see your comment about my Butler and Auburn. It is very comfortable, but I think you should know. You're one of our really solid followers. You should know how many home field apparel stuff that I have. So
that's why Amy had to start working as a librarian again to pay off all this debt he's got with home field.
Yeah, I gotta put all that on hold. I got a new furnace coming in soon, furnace and AC unit, and some new tires on the car, and so the home field apparel stuff's got to be put on hold.
I saw you posted in the community a tour of your man cave, which I've not yet watched. I can only assume that the next step is a tour through your home field wardrobe of stuff there.
Yeah,
so.
All on hangers, color coded.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's just life, isn't it? You remodel all 3 floors, new flooring, painting, carpeting in some rooms. The hardwood planking, whatever, and then all of a sudden you got to have a new furnace. It's like, just keep hitting me with some bills. So I need Jay Horry to send me a few more donations, to help pay some of the bills. That's what I think needs to happen. Andy wants a bedroom tour. Jay's back. Jay's been having a good time tonight, I can already tell. All right. I have not looked over the questions, Andy.
I did. If you want me to
Yeah,
through them, I can.
I will.
If one of you has it open, will you forward on the run sheet to me?
I'll let you do that, Coach. But if you want to start it, I can go through.
All right. I think I can do it in a private chat if I'm smart enough.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, good idea.
You are smart enough. Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let me see where we're at. All right, let's go forward.
All right.
Here we go.
Hey, it's Romeo Langford. What's the only thing better than hitting a game winner to beat Wisconsin? Celebrate it with friends afterwards. Join Jarrett, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Welcome back to Assembly Call Radio. I'm Brian Tonsoni filling in for Jared Morris, who's putting his son Teddy to sleep. He'll join us if he can here before the show ends. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and Chad Schwarzkopf, and we're going to now answer your questions as it's time now for our mailbag. These questions were submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about and join us at assemblycall.com/community. I send it to my friend Andy, who will lead us through our mailbag.
All right. First question from Elbows In, longtime listener and question submitter. I was listening to Mark Titus's podcast today, and they were discussing Marquette's biggest issue last year was there was only one ball. As I look to our team this year, it feels like that could be a similar trap. One and done aspirations, comeback years for X and Ware, breakout years for Malik, etc. As a coach, how do you coach away from a player being a ball hog? So, Coach, I'll throw this to you first.
I think it comes down to communication. I think, again, that's where Coach Woodson, he's just an honest guy, and he's going to come out and tell a dude that he's shooting the ball too much. I also think it comes down to recruiting the right guys. You don't bring the ball hogs onto campus if you could all possibly do that. But when you have guys like Ware and Mbako who want to come in and then move to the pros, you do wonder at what point during the season does that become the thing that they're concerned about more than winning for Indiana. And I think you have a coaching staff that really gets Indiana and understands Indiana. And I think you just have to communicate roles and expectations and shot selection and all of those things. And then you got to play Boogie Flan's interview and talk about how he wants to help other people get better. And I think Woodson's the right guy for that, I think, because he can say, I've been in the pros. You don't need to shoot 30 shots a game to impress the pros. You know, dive on the floor, block out, or whatever it is that the pros want, right? But, you know, and then obviously you can do the coaching things. You can use the bench. You can run them. You can do things like that. But I think the best way is to really have heart-to-heart talks with people about, you know, if you help us win, you're going to be seen in a good light as well as your statistics. And I think those are the important things. And then what I like, Andy, that Indiana does is like they have their pro days, and I'm sure other colleges do that, but Woodson brings in his guys, and the more you do that, the more you show you're genuine and you know what you're talking about, then those guys are going to listen. And I think that's the best way to do it as opposed to traditional benching or those things. But it's a fine line because you want a guy confident. You don't want anyone afraid of shooting, right? If you have a good player who's afraid to shoot, that's just as bad as someone ball hog as well. So it's a fine line, that shot selection coaching. And that's why I tell people now who want to go into coaching, get a psychology major. I think that does more to you than watching any coach talk about shooting or drills. Is learn how to motivate young men to be their best and to accept their roles. I think is the toughest job coaches have to do, but I think it's vital. So those are it's a good question from Elbows In, but that's kind of the direction I would go.
Yeah, Chad, any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think Coach nailed most of it, but just kind of narrowing it down to an Indiana standpoint. I mean, I want a degree of our players to have a little bit of ball hog in them. You want to have a couple guys that are those type of ball hogs because not every hog's gonna have his day. There might be a day where one player's hitting and another player is not. So I think because of the type of players that Indiana goes for and Indiana recruits, and just the way Woodson is at handling those types of players, I like the idea that there might be a question of too many guys being ball hogs, because then we have more options. We have more scoring options, and while it might be Ware's night one night, it might be X's night the next. It's going to shift throughout the season. So I'd rather have it that way than what we've had in the past with a quiet team and who's going to take this shot at the end of the game to win the game. I'd rather have too many options in that standpoint than searching for where the point's going to come.
You know, Chad, that's we need closers. That's a good point too. You need that mentality. Sorry, Andy.
No, you're good. I think what you said, Chad, makes a lot of sense. I think that will be, for a team that has been very reliant on, basically two players, kind of Trace and X a couple years ago and Trace and Jalen last year. I think that'll be a transition for this team to know that they've got a little bit more balance. And I think, as Coach said, you got to mesh that a little bit with, hey, when it's crunch time, who do I really need to go to? But you're going to have some of those games where, it may not be your night. Matchup might not be good. Play, go a little bit smaller this game, bigger this game. How does that look like? And I do think being able to keep guys happy in that scenario is a skill and an important skill for coaches. I think a little bit about the Eagles, quite honestly. Like, you've seen this through the first few games with some of their receivers. It's A.J. Brown's pissed one week. He comes back and gets a bunch of catches the next week. Devontae Smith was kind of pissed last week. I'm guessing he gets his share of targets, coming up this week. Dallas Goedert hasn't really been demonstrative on the sidelines, but he's been another guy. Like, how do you do it? So there are challenges with that as you go through and do it. And I think it's very incumbent upon the coach to try to figure out how to build both the culture and relationships with the players well enough to figure out, like, hey, look at the big picture. You're going to have nights where you get yours. There might be a night that you're off. Doesn't mean that I don't trust you. Doesn't mean that I don't want you to have the ball. Just trying to figure out things like that. So it was a really good question. All right. Next couple, I think we hit on some of the stuff with the McNeely, so we'll skip those. But next question from Matt: do you think Leal will get any meaningful minutes this year? I like seeing the native Indiana players represent. Jared, you've rejoined us. Why don't you take this one first?
Welcome back.
I'm back. Yes, my son was having trouble sleeping. Coach, we were reading Goodnight Big Construction Site, which you sent us. But he really wasn't having it, so he's over hanging out with Mama right now for a little while, and we'll try bedtime in a little bit. It's just one of those nights. But Chad, how perfect did this work, man? First off, I apologize for not sending you the link ahead of time. We talked about you coming on spaced, but I love the new background. That looks awesome.
Thank you. It's the new office. Just moved to things. Actually, this one is brand new. Sorry, those listening on podcast streams, as I point to something that's visual. But this is a Race Thompson practice jersey that I just added that's signed.
Nice.
And I'm happy that it's in a display case because it may or may not have been washed before it came to me. So that'll stay behind glass.
Nice. And then is that Devontae back there too?
And then Devontae there. That one is a Tamar Bates. And then number 12, you can probably guess from last year.
That is awesome. Very cool, man. Very cool. Okay, so the question at hand was Anthony Leal. Do we expect Leal to get some minutes this year? But that's an interesting question. I think Ja'Kai Newton's status obviously impacts that, and no one is really expecting a lot from Ja'Kai as he recovers from his injuries. And I think, Coach, when we did the minutes, I think Leal was one that we didn't give a lot of minutes to because I think it's difficult to project. I think he's a guy. Here's what I would say. I think he's a guy that's not going to play every game, and his minutes will be irregular. But I have a feeling that on a team with a lot of, kind of moving pieces and, if someone tweaks an ankle or something, I think there will probably be some spots where Coach Woodson just wants someone who's going to go out there and do what he wants them to do. Because I think through maybe the first 6 to 8 weeks with all these new guys in there, they've got to figure out exactly what Coach Woodson wants. Well, Anthony Leal knows exactly what Coach Woodson wants, and so I can see some games early on, where he comes in, offers, another wing who can shoot. So I don't expect regular minutes from him, Certainly that could change with injury, but that can't really be predicted. But I could see some moments early, just given kind of the inexperience and the lack of cohesion that this team will have playing games together. Where he could be thrown in there. Beyond that, I don't necessarily think he projects to have a lot, but we'll have to see. That would probably be my best guess. Do you guys think that's reasonable, or?
I think that's very reasonable. I think his value to this team is in the locker room and on the bench and to fill in those emergency situations. And I think he's accepted that role. And he's having a good run with the NIL and all of that stuff. So I think he is a leader. I think given the right situation, he can come in, hit a three, or make a good pass, or be in the right position. But if he has to play meaningful minutes, then we have other players we're counting on, or believe that we're counting on, that are getting hurt. But I do think he is a valuable member. I will stress that all year long. You can impact winning without playing meaningful minutes on the court, and every good program needs people like that. So is he a valuable member of the Indiana basketball team? Absolutely needed. On court, probably not as much.
All right. So last question here. This is a good one. So from Kyle, if IU were to somehow beat Michigan this week in football, I believe it would be the biggest upset in IU history. Certainly given the context of the rest of the season, that's probably hard to argue. Since that won't happen, okay. What is the biggest upset by any sports team at IU? So Chad, I'll throw this one to you first. Jared's got a few possibilities in here. Feel free to go off the board if you are so inclined. But what stands out in your mind?
I'm going to go topical and new. Volleyball beating Purdue. That hasn't happened in a while. Programs on the up and up. Things are going great for them. Yeah.
I think.
So broke that streak at home. Put it at them, and that program's building something really big and really exciting. A shout out, obviously, to a few of the chat mobbers that are constantly at those games.
Yeah. All right, Coach, what about you?
You got to go back to some of those football ones in the 80s, beating Michigan, Ohio State. I will personally take the 14-7, I think it was, score over Michigan in 1987.
14-10.
In attendance. What's that?
14-10.
14-10. I don't remember because I was having a hell of a time. I had a wine flask full of non-wine of like bourbon on top of a couple kegs at the tailgate, and it was rainy and it was misty, and Bo Schembechler was crying because we were too loud, and they tried to take a timeout and calm the crowd down, and Billy Reisert blocks the punt. That to me is going to be the ultimate memory. Was personally there. I will also throw out the one, Jared, you have on the run sheet. I think IU baseball in 2013, yes, they won the regional and had some pros on it, but anytime you go into a powerhouse Florida State and have to win 2 out of 3 and go to the College World Series, so Indiana comes from a long rebuild in baseball and then finds themselves in the College World Series in 2013. I think that was a good choice to throw out there. But those two stick in my mind. There's some basketball ones that are good too.
Man, that Michigan game was great. I was at that one too, in the stands up with my mom. You were probably the person she was shielding me from.
Absolutely. When you walked by me in the parking lot, she kind of covered your eyes and your ears.
Yeah,
I had a T-shirt on that said "Bone Bow," and it was really graphically inappropriate. I still have the shirt in the garage. I was going to save it. It was great. But yeah,
how great
I apologize.
Bo Schembechler was complaining about the crowd noise at Memorial Stadium for poor little Michigan. Go away. Just give me a break. Look, the first one that came to mind for me was right back there in the 80s, the darkest day in Ohio State football history, beating Ohio State 31-10, the Brian DeWitt's game. Earl Bruce famously called it the darkest day in Ohio State history. Down the football offices, Coach Mallory had that framed up like by his office. That was such a great game. Andy, when I saw this question, there were 3 people I immediately wanted to go to get ideas: Jeremy Gray, Ken Bykoff, and Chris Williams. IU artifacts because I knew they would have some great ideas, and they did. And they mentioned a lot of the ones that that we've already talked about. And Jeremy had a really interesting point, which was the history of IU sports. It's not as much filled with upsets because you've got these super dominant programs. Basketball has always been so good, so there aren't many opportunities for upsets. Soccer, there's never an upset. Swimming, diving, there's never an upset. And then football, unfortunately, has had a couple, but oftentimes hasn't been able to get over the hump. But some of the ones, and the baseball one, was one that they mentioned. One of the ones that Jeremy mentioned that I thought was really interesting for basketball was not just a game, but a season. And it's Indiana winning the Big Ten title in 1989, that famous stretch where Jay Edwards was just hitting game-winning shot after game-winning shot in a Big Ten with the Flying Illini and eventual national champion Michigan. And that, of course, is a season, you think back to that Michigan win when Coach Knight just going crazy celebrating after Jay hits the shot. And I thought that was a really good one, to win the Big Ten that season. So that was a good one. And then the other one that a lot of us who were in school at the time will always look back on fondly was the win over Duke in 2002, which, that Indiana team obviously was a Big Ten, champion, and ended up going all the way to the final game. But that Duke team, I'll remind you, I think is still the only team, aren't they, Andy, to be number one in adjusted offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency in KenPom history. And Indiana beat them in the Sweet 16, obviously in a game that we all remember. So that one certainly has to be up there. And the comeback that they had to, make to do it as well.
Yeah, I think the fact in that game that nobody thought they were going to win to begin with, and then they dug themselves a massive hole at various points, and just how inept they looked at times in that game was crazy. Yeah, that was one that I thought of. The two football ones that you already brought up are the two football ones that came to mind. That Michigan game, I remember being there. Weather was just kind of miserable, kind of cold and rainy, and but I even at 9 years old, I was like, I don't want to leave. My parents talked about leaving. I didn't want to leave, and to this day, it's the only time. It was the last time that I was. I guess till the COVID year was the last time they'd actually beaten them. So.
Yeah.
So that one was there, and the Ohio State one for sure. And I think to some extent the Ohio State one probably means more to me now living in Ohio and just being around like the culture of Ohio State football, if you will. The only other one that I thought, I know somebody mentioned the Watt shot. I think I mean, it obviously in name was an upset. It certainly was unexpected, but I would probably put that behind the Duke one. This was just an unexpected one, and IU was a 1 seed, so you can't really say this was an upset, but it was more of just a surprise. But I still go back to that IU UNLV game in the Final Four in 1987, where it was like, I don't know that it was an upset the way they beat them. I think it was an upset it wasn't an upset that they beat them maybe, but an upset in terms of how they beat them. But
yeah, that's a good one.
That probably doesn't really qualify in the true sense of what the of maybe what the question is asking.
Wasn't the score?
But it's a good one to remember, though.
Yeah, the Ohio State football game, 31-10 or something. You could tell how old I am.
31-10
scores.
And then the next season, we just beat the hell out of them.
Yeah, 42-7. This was true. I was taking a constitutional law. Yes, Jay, I took a constitutional law class at IUPUI in 93. And there was a court case that said plaintiff had spray painted 31-10 on a building or a car in Columbus, Ohio, and somehow had been arrested. And then they went through the appeals process and everything. But it was a case law that I had read and had to comment on in this class. And I just started cracking up when it said Columbus and it said spray painted the numbers 31-10 on.
Great.
So some Indiana fan got busted for spray painting the score somewhere in Columbus, Ohio.
What was the final ruling on that case then, Coach? Do you remember?
I don't know.
Final ruling was IU beats Ohio State at football. You do whatever the hell you want.
That's right. That's right. You're not held accountable for
the
your
IU win
actions.
exception.
Very much now, however, looking forward to late night debates about constitutional law between Coach and Jay, replacing debates about Brad Underwood at this year's meetup. That'll be great.
Hey, I'm practicing. I'm practicing for this week's meetup.
Not law, to be clear.
Not law, but drinking and arguing with Jay. I'm getting ready.
By the way, the only other one that I want to mention. We should mention the 84 win over North Carolina. That was obviously a huge, NCAA tournament win over a team with Michael Jordan that was loaded with pros. I would have to say the weirdest upset was the 2019 victory over Michigan State at Michigan State in the midst of losing 12 out of 13, and the one game you win is over one of the three best teams in the country in an arena where you never win. And Juwan Morgan, he got hurt early in that game, didn't he? Isn't that the game where he got hurt early and had to leave the game?
In the first half.
Then Duran came in.
And I think his shoulder,
Yeah, Duran played really well. Justin Smith was awesome. Romeo wasn't efficient, but made some big plays. Al and Devontae hit a bunch of big shots. That was just the most absurd. I didn't even know what to do in the postgame show. It's just like, what do we do with this? But that was a great one. That was a really, really good one.
I bet that's one that someday Tom Izzo will just sit back and be like, how in the hell did I lose that game?
No, he's just going to continue muttering Justin Smith to himself over and over again, who somehow was a Michigan State killer.
Yeah, that's true too. Yelling
Justin
about transfers and who knows what.
Yep. All right, that is it for the questions, and so I guess that means that is it for the show, and so that is going to do it for us on this week's edition of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Thank you, as always, to Bob Thompson for producing our music. Thank you to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logos. And thank you, as always, for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you, well, hopefully Sunday, but definitely again next Thursday. Until then.
Take it from me, Robert Johnson. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Here I come. This is Stunt Sony.
And we should mention, while we have Chad here, Chad, did you get a chance to talk about Hoosier Morning After yet?
No. I was just going to mention, this could be for everyone that's still here. So I'll be firing up again with Hoosier Morning After this season as my phone rings on me. Again, if those of you who haven't seen it yet, it's a post-game show done the morning after every game. We as Hoosier fans tend to be very emotional. Just see the guy that reps this brand after each game, and you know what that is.
Let me just jump in real quick.
Yeah, exactly. So you know that sometimes you just need the night to sit on it and let those initial emotions settle. So that was the premise of starting the show. I think this is the third season or so. Last year, Martha, the mop lady, if you follow him on Twitter, joins me as my co-host, and I bring a few other people on. Coach has been on a few times. Jared joined us
on Twitter.
Yep, her on Twitter, correct. Andy will get on eventually one of these days. Ryan, if he happens to be on this coast. But IU Artifacts is on with us. We're going to get Tyler, who's defected to us to Iowa. He's going to be on either the show before the Iowa game to help preview Iowa or on that actual show. And then a few other celebrity type ones that I'm kind of working on. So we'll tease those as we go on. But you can go to YouTube and search Hoosier Morning After and subscribe for me or follow me on Twitter at General Chadwick.
Yeah, and we're getting you on another episode of the show so you can be on the whole time and give the proper pitch for it early on. But yeah, Hoosier Morning After, a great addition to your IU podcast menu to listen to, because there's a lot of us out there that can't get enough. So it's always nice to have another smart IU basketball conversation, which you guys always do.
Thank you.
So, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So by the way,
miss having Tyler on the beat. It was nice hearing him with Alex. Although it's still jarring to see him like tweeting stuff about Iowa football in my timeline. I'm like, what the?
I have hovered over that unfollow button so many times, and then I'm like, no, I can't. It's such great content.
Yeah. And you know
when
why?
When he starts tweeting about Caitlin Clark, you're probably going to find yourself hitting the button.
Yeah, and I can punch it.
That'll be the breaking point. But yeah, for now, you're
okay. Now, speaking of Tyler Tashman, so I teased this earlier, and I wasn't there to play it during Media Day. Absolutely one of the greatest moments in Big Ten Media Day history is Tyler Tashman asking Woody about Malik Renew's burger. If you haven't heard this audio, it's incredible. I have it right here, the whole thing. So let's listen here real quick.
He has like a burger at Big Woods. Have you tried it?
What is that?
Like Big Woods, a restaurant in Bloomington. Like through an NIL deal, he has his own burger.
He has his own burger.
Yeah, like named after.
What the hell? He shouldn't be eating burgers. Is it a veggie burger or something?
No, it's got bacon and cheese and stuff.
Oh, so you telling on him then?
No,
So
I thought you knew about it. I didn't mean to get him in trouble.
No, I didn't know about it.
Oh, okay.
I go to a few spots in Bloomington Need. I don't know about all the other places.
I guess the burger's working. I guess it's working.
Well, yeah, his body fat's down and he's trimmed down, so that hopefully he's not eating too many of them.
About Malik improving his body.
I am clipping so many individual little snippets from that to use for later.
What's
perfect?
What's so
I did
great
not realize
from
that was Tyler who had set him up for that
That's
question.
Tyler.
That's
Yeah.
What's so great about it too is that it gives you a glimpse into why these recruits fall for Woody, because he lets his media guard down, and you get to just really sense how Woody is. But Tyler, I think we're all going to curse him because he's such a good writer and a reporter, and he's going to find that Caitlin side that's going to make us all fall in love with him and hate him even more in some way.
Okay, so I have an admission to make. I decided something this offseason after last year. I'm done with the Caitlin Clark hate and like being annoyed by it. She's such a phenomenal player. I just want to enjoy it. I know it's annoying how she gets over promoted and all that stuff, and I'm waiting until AC After Dark, so hopefully no one's listening as I say this. And check back during the season because I'm sure I'll get annoyed, and I want to beat her. Don't get me wrong, but she's done a lot for women's basketball to help raise the profile, and I really just kind of want to enjoy watching her play because she is a phenomenal player. And so I'm going to try this year to not get so worked up about the other stuff that she has no control over. Yes, some of her antics can be a little bit annoying, but I kind of just want to enjoy the great basketball player that she is. That was hard to get out, but that's how I'm feeling here in the off season.
First thing when you have a problem,
no one's going to support me. Okay.
Are you just pulling a Ryan and trying to get everything on record so you can say in the future that you were right? Is that what we're doing here?
That would be a very Ryan thing to do.
Time has proven me right on virtually nothing.
But seriously, I just she's a great player, so just want to enjoy watching her play.
That is inarguable.
And beating her. Got to beat her.
Hey, shout out to our chat mob today. Really good conversations from the start to the end. I was peeking in on it, and they, we
that
appreciate.
Jay guy got a little bitter in there at some point, though.
Yeah, it went downhill once Jay joined, but besides that,
how'd he beat the filters?
I don't know. I thought we blocked him.
Yeah.
Although he is trying to get Connor to print the Bone Bow shirt. So, I mean, he is trying to do some good in the world in there. So all is not completely lost.
My other idea for a shirt, if we get Liam, Boogie Fland, and Derek Queen, is a shirt that just has a silhouette of the four coaches walking like in somewhere that says the trip was good. Kind of like the kick was good, but in honor of their trip, all four of them to go see those three guys. If we land them all, the trip was good.
I think actually with that shirt, Andy, I think I overheard from Connor that Jay's going to start an offshoot called Home Alley instead of Home Field, and it's going to be all those kind of off the cuff shirts.
Moderately offensive, I would assume, and then you just kind of move. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, I gotta go. I gotta go get my son to bed for real this time. This was.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Good to be here, Chad. Thanks for hopping on, man.
Yeah,
sorry
appreciate
guys.
it.
A little more organized. That was totally my fault. I apologize for that, man. All righty. We'll talk to y'all soon.
All right. See you guys.
See you, everybody.